Just pull up the mic, man. You're on, but you got to raise it up.
House is now in session. Thank you. I would like to welcome the member for St. Michael Southeast back to the House. I wish her all the best. Minutes. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday the 28th of May 2019 and Tuesday the 4th of June 2019.
Speaker, Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that those minutes be taken as read.
All those in favour? If there's no
Question is.
What's that?
Question is that those minutes.
The question is that those minutes stand confirmed. All members in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Announcements by Your Honour the Deputy Speaker.
I'm in receipt of the special audit of the Transport Board.
Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General. Petitions. Papers.
Seek leave, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to lay the National Cruise Development Commission final report dated February 2019.
Your wish.
Insurance and Social Security Insurable Earnings Order 2019 and the National Insurance and Social Security Benefits Order 2019.
Government notices, private members notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43 and 44 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
Second.
I'd like to second that.
The question is that those standing orders so mentioned be suspended for the remainder of their sitting. Those honourable members in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Government business is now the order of the day.
Order number 7, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Tourism and International Transport, to move the passing of a resolution that the Parliament of Barbados take note of the final report of the National Cruise Development Commission.
Member for St. James Central.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the resolution which I put before the House reflects on the order just raised from the table. And the resolution states, whereas the Government of Barbados has recognized that while the cruise industry has been recording significant growth over the last several years, outpacing land-based arrivals, the cruise lines are reporting declining consumer interest in Barbados due to the fact that its product offering in general and our onshore tour capacity in particular has neither diversified nor expanded over the last decade. And whereas the Government of Barbados established the National Cruise Development Commission on August 13, 2018 to provide for immediate implementation a mission-critical plan to address the challenges currently facing the cruise sector in Barbados. And whereas the report of the National Cruise Development Commission entitled A Dawn for Cruise Tourism in Barbados analyzes the cruise tourism industry, examines current global trends in cruise tourism and the Barbados situation, and gives recommendations needed to overcome the principal challenges confronting cruise tourism in Barbados. And whereas the report also examines the key infrastructure necessary for the cruise industry to operate at an optimum level, including enhancing the port experience for cruise passengers, improving road infrastructure, and the need to improve the overall physical environment, which often prevents cruise passengers from visiting tourist attractions or landmarks. And whereas the report provides key strategic approaches to cruise development, including looking more closely at the European market, exploring mechanisms for growing summer cruise traffic, and prioritizing training. And whereas the report provides recommendations as to how those public sector institutions involved in the cruise industry can play pivotal roles as intermediaries between the policymakers and private sector operators, so as to ensure that an appropriate regulatory mechanism is in place to facilitate the business community. And whereas it is intended that the recommendations put forward by the Commission will contribute to a sustainable increase in the cruise industry-related economic benefits for Barbados. Whereas the Cabinet on 30th of May 2019 agreed that the final report submitted by the National Cruise Development Commission entitled A New Dawn for Cruise Tourism in Barbados be laid in Parliament, be it resolved that the Parliament of Barbados take note of the final report of the National Cruise Development Commission. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to begin by thanking the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, who would have, I believe, gotten notice of this resolution perhaps in the very latter stages of last week. And it is to his credit, sir, that he understands and I believe implicitly agrees to the need for there to be a certain urgency in the country having an opportunity to benefit from a full ventilation of some of the issues surrounding this very important sector in Barbados's economic arrangements. Mr. Speaker, I also want to begin by thanking the 15 members of the National Cruise Development Commission who, from the date of their appointment in August of last year until the date of the submission of the final report in February of this year, would have rendered unpaid yeoman service, and I emphasize unpaid, yeoman service to this country. They, sir, are representative of a cross-section of Barbadians coming from the cultural industry, coming from the taxi and ground transportation sector, coming, Mr. Speaker, sir, from the small business sector, coming from the sectors of larger business enterprise in this country, people with experience and some expertise, Mr. Speaker, in touristic-related matters and in matters related to industry and culture. A cross-section of Barbadians, sir, male and female, who voluntarily gave of their time in an effort to try to help us come to a concrete understanding of some of the challenges which are facing this sector. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it is to this country's credit that we have a body of individuals such as those that we were able to draw upon at a time of need in order to make it possible for us to be here and to do the level of diagnosis which I intend to take the country through with respect to this critical sector. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand before you as a tourism minister to give you and your House a very detailed report on what is a critical component of the tourism sector in Barbados. And of course, we define that simply as cruise tourism. Perhaps, sir, I should place it in some context, because one of the concerns that I have personally is that we speak the language of tourism in Barbados in a way that is reflective of a level of complacency, almost self-satisfied smugness, because we have done it for a long time and we've done it very well. it was not until 1958, sir, that formal governmental involvement in an organized structural way came to the issue of regulating and promoting the development of tourism in Barbados. I am obviously, therefore, sir, not the first tourism minister to have to address this House, but I believe that it is entirely accurate to say that I am the first tourism minister on whose shoulders the responsibility has laid to commission a report of this nature, going into a fully detailed and fully in-depth analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of the cruise sector in Barbados, and then to lay it before your House. Mr. Speaker, as I say, we started government's formal involvement in tourism in 1958, and I did refer to a level of complacency, which I think I can expand on. We, sir, as a country, were very confident back in the 1950s when we started government's involvement in tourism. And we were very confident largely because of the fact that we had done this business well. We were in the hospitality sector, sir, for a considerable period of years, 250 odd years before that 1958 Tourist Board development. Barbados was known and had built a reputation in hospitality across this region. The records would reflect, sir, that in the 1700s, there were hotels in Barbados where seafarers would overnight and get bed and breakfast and recreation and forms of entertainment. And those forms of entertainment in those days, sir, ranged far and wide, even as I am told they do today. But again, as far back as the 1700s, in 1745, we saw the first of the formal sectoral linkages where Codrington College would have been created, and people would have sailed here, so they came here via a cruise, a sea-related form of transportation, but they came here for educational purposes, and so therefore we began that which we now call educational tourism. And I think it would have been a few years later, yes, in 1751, that George Washington and his brother would have cruised here because his brother Lawrence was ill with tuberculosis, and it was recommended that he come to Barbados to get the benefit of the trade winds and so on, and to recover. And he would have been here for health purposes. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we have done it for a long time is a two-pronged argument. One, it induces you to believe that you are or have reached a level of perfection in that which is absolutely critical to the country's economic performance, and that you are unparalleled and unrivaled. And out of that, I suspect, has come a certain level of complacency. And equally, Mr. Speaker, sir, the other side of it is that because we have been in this industry for a long time, we are truly now what you might call a mature tourism product. And as such, sir, the time comes when you have to refresh, rejuvenate, and reimagine that which you do. And I want to start on that note, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, because I genuinely felt when I came to the Ministry of Tourism that the challenge which confronted us was a need for reimagining and refreshing that which we do in the sector. It did not take long, however, Mr. Speaker, for me to come to an understanding that that perhaps was an optimistic assessment of the state of affairs. Discussions with senior people in the ministry, and indeed in the BTPA, as it then was, and the BTMI, reflected, Mr. Speaker, sir, the need for there to be a greater degree of concern. In having further discussions with the Prime Minister, the Honourable Minister of Finance and Prime Minister of Barbados, sir, we determined that it was necessary for us, and indeed at one stage both of us, to go to the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association and meet with officials of cruise lines who are coming to Barbados, most primarily Carnival Cruise Line and also Royal Caribbean. I would have met with her, with both of them, but Mr. Speaker, sir, on my own with others. In those days, sir, it was almost as though on a weekly basis you were going to have another meeting with some other part of this sector in order to get a full and complete understanding of where they were mentally with regard to Barbados, and quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, sir, where we were in terms of our performance and their assessment of our performance. And it is against that backdrop that in August of 2018, I launched the National Commission for Cruise Development. And the purpose at that time, Mr. Speaker, sir, was not any longer refreshment and reimagination or simple rejuvenation. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, was that by August of 2018, having assumed the ministry's responsibility in May of 2018, I had come to the conclusion, sir, that the issue before me and certainly before the country was how we bring about a sustainable increase in industry-related economic performance, and that the issue of sustainability was at the forefront of our national concerns. And why do I say that, sir? The rationale for this commission and the raison d'etre for the commission, the raison d'etre for my saying that we have a sustainability issue on our hands lies, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the fact that all the available evidence suggested and still suggests that for the last 10 years or so, this country had been flying blind with respect to what it was doing in the cruise tourism sector. You cast a quizzical look in my direction, Mr. Speaker. Flying blind is a term used by those who are in the aeronautical, the aviation field. It means that none of the instruments on the panel are working. It means that you are on your own up there, and if you land, it is really a matter of fortune. It is a matter of luck and chance that you get where you're going, or where you're hoping to go. And that, quite frankly, represents the state of the cruise tourism sector between 2008 and 2018. We had, sir, a general appearance of doing well. We spoke in this country, and indeed in this parliament, the discourse was glib. We would hear about Barbados being a warm weather destination. We would hear, Mr. Speaker, sir, that which we all knew, that there were striking beaches. We would hear about our ties to the United Kingdom and our close proximity geographically to the United States of America. But we spoke, Mr. Speaker, sir, with no clear understanding or no reflection of a clear understanding of how these assets that work for us in terms of a comparative advantage to other places could be leveraged in order to ensure that the industry and the industry's performance could reach its maximum potential. And therefore, if you reflect on the level of discourse that the country had with respect to tourism, you would be surprised when the commission was launched, and you would be surprised at some of the points that I drew to the country's attention at the time of the launch, because, as I said, we lived in an environment of complacency where the surface of the water appeared calm and smooth, but we were not mindful of the treacherous situation that lay just beneath the surface. This country, sir, does not speak to tourism and must speak to tourism in the context of a regulatory environment. It must speak to tourism, sir, but does not now in the context of setting standards that enable us to be more competitive. The country does not speak to tourism, did not speak to tourism, but must speak to tourism in the context, Mr. Speaker, sir, of sustainable development. The country has not been speaking to tourism issues, but must now speak to tourism issues in the context of where we exist and where subsectors within our industry, like cruise, exist in the global value chain. Those are the economic and, quite frankly, sir, the sustainability issues that continue to challenge, if not threaten, the long-term viability and sustainability of this sector. What we do tend to speak about in tourism, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the number of arrivals, whether by sea or by air, that Barbados has had. I say, sir, that it is perhaps a bit of an understatement if I say to you that I have never been persuaded that the quantity of visitor arrivals to Barbados is the best possible statistic upon which we as a country and as a people should be relying in trying to make an assessment of our visitor performance. I spoke to the Barbados Hotel Tourism Association last week at their annual general meeting, and I made the point there that I make here. It is entirely possible, Mr. Speaker, sir, for you to have a herd of cows. It is equally possible for you to have a shortage of milk. My mission, as I understand it, sir, is not to come here purely for the purpose of counting the cows. I think it is more wise, sir, to assist the people in drinking the milk. And that is, yes. And that is the substance, sir, of where I think the philosophical divide between this administration and certainly the previous administration exists. And I am convinced, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the Prime Minister and myself are of similar mind with respect to this matter, and that is the reason why her blessing and imprimatur was given to this question of a National Cruise Development Commission, which helps us to go down to granular detail. And it is my intention, sir, during the course of this discussion today, to bring the country, walk this country through the granular details of how this vital sector has performed and indeed underperformed during the period of time that we can reasonably reflect upon. And on a basis of that diagnosis, sir, then try to posit a way forward upon which I will then invite all of Barbados to lend their critical comment and hopefully their support. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, perhaps I should begin in that vein by reminding the House of a perspective shared by my predecessor in the previous administration and the impression that was put abroad with respect to our performance. On the 26th of November in 2018, Mr. Speaker, sir, a publication which is called shiptechnology.com reflected on Barbados's cruise performance in the year 2017. And that publication came about as a result of it going into the global public domain, that the global public space, that Barbados had set up a Cruise Development Commission. Now, I want to say, sir, that when we set up the Cruise Development Commission, the gurus here, including one or two who had been shown the door after the people of Barbados spoke unequivocally in May of last year, were heard to raise their voice in alarm. But where you go set up a cruise commission for? Why you need a 15-member commission for? What on earth could they say or find to say about cruise? Everybody know that Barbados had a record number of arrivals in 2017. What is that about? I heard some of it. As I said, sir, at that time I was busy trying to make sure that I was able to mend fences with a number of partners in the tourism trade and travel industry, and very often, therefore, was not able to be in Barbados to engage. And fortunately, that might be fortunate, sir, because I probably would have engaged at too early a stage, before findings had come out independently. And you know, sir, even in this place, in his passion for the office he now holds, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition would have reflected that, you know, the Honourable Member in his seat, elsewhere, etc., etc. But it wasn't joyriding. It was about this business. And the Minister back then would have reflected on his assessment of this business in the following terms. He said that It is never easy as a mature tourism destination to maintain growth as these levels in the competitive business landscape in which we operate are always difficult to sustain. But I am pleased that we have once again been able to prove that Barbados's value is great, as shown by the record arrivals at the seaport through 2017. The article itself, sir, says that at a glance, the raw passenger numbers suggested that all is well. The year 2017 saw record cruise passenger arrivals through the seaport at Bridgetown, which processed 818,752 arrivals, up 12.9% from 2016. And I would be the first to agree, Mr. Speaker, sir, that a 12% increase in arrivals from 2016 to 2017 is very encouraging. But Barbados's value, I want to continue to submit, sir, is not to be defined by the number of arrivals. And if you look carefully, which is what the Cruise Commission's report does, it is possible to identify, Mr. Speaker, sir, a number of cracks which exist in the facade. And I have come here today, sir, to walk the House through that maze of cracks in the facade, so that we are walking by sight and not by faith, Mr. Speaker, in matters which relate to the public finance. The Honourable Member for St. Thomas, who sits right next to me, knows that faith is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. I think that is in the book of Hebrews, sir. It is perhaps, sir, important for us to recognize that the number of cruise passengers that visited Barbados increased 33% between 2005 and 2006, and 2014 and 2015. So if you want to talk the language of arrivals, then, and only the language of arrivals, then Barbados did impressively, because arrivals increased 33% between 2005-06 winter and 2014-15 winter. The numbers rose from 405,300 to 405,300 passengers in 2005-2006 and went to 554,400 passengers in 2014-15. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, during that same period, average expenditure per passenger fell 30%. So if you want to talk numbers and beat your chest, as was the practice in this place repeatedly, you will say that you had a 33% increase in arrivals over a 10-year period. If you want to pause a little bit and look to see what the people who came here spent, you will see, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the 30% really was a decline in spend between 2005 winter and 2015 winter. Now, the figures are that in 2005, the average cruise passenger spent $111.82 United States currency in Barbados. By 2011, that had gone as low, Mr. Speaker, sir, as $64 United States currency. It went back up a little bit by 2015 to $78.03. Now, that is the average passenger getting off the ship. But if you understand the cruise sector well, you know that the real big spenders are the crew. And the crew are the largest spenders simply because the crew got to live on board the ship. So the crew will tend to get off the ship if you have a retail sector, for example, which we boast about and about which I must speak in this debate today. Some people will say, well, look, Bridgetown got a lot of stores and so on. Let me come and buy a little clothing. That's what the crew is going to tell you. They're going to go and buy their personal effects because they're living on board the ship. They are going to buy, Mr. Speaker, or go and visit the doctor if there may be some medical problem or whatever. So you get that aspect of it. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West, when he was in the practice of dentistry, would tell you that he would have had patients who were from off the ship. Mr. Speaker, sir, when I was practicing law, I had clients who came to me off a ship. And Mr. Speaker, sir, there are a number of business transactions that take place in Barbados, or should be taking place in Barbados, if we are maintaining a reputation with the crew as a place where they would opt to get off the ship to do a little bit of business and spend a little bit of money. But the average expenditure per crew member dropped 47% from US $76.18 in the winter of 2005-2006 down to $40.35 in 2015-16. So the decline in expenditure, sir, was not only at the passenger side, but also on the crew side. And it seems to me that that would reflect that there is a loss of confidence to some degree in the crew members who are accompanying ships here on a weekly basis. And you have to understand, sir, what happens on board a ship. If a passenger on board a ship is curious about a destination, as I have been when I have been on a ship, I would go to a crew member. You obviously are directed to the director of cruise, but you can't always find him or her. So you go find somebody who you feel is knowledgeable. It might be the person who is in charge of the cleaning of the cabins in the place, in the part of the ship where you are. It might be somebody who you meet and converse with while you're having breakfast or dinner or whatever. And that person tells you, man, listen, don't bother to stop at that destination. Don't get off at that destination with a view to buying nothing. Don't bother with there. Go to so-and-so. Wait till when you get to St. Martin. That's where you want to go. Wait till when you get to wherever else. That is where you want to go. That is the message that is sent. And passengers, almost like sheep in a pasture, being led by a shepherd, will follow that message. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the financial performance between 2005 to 2015 strikes a sharp contrast between the arrivals growth that we kept talking about. Now, I come to this House today, Mr. Speaker, sir, to say in unapologetic terms that I believe that we have absolutely no moral choice than but to confront this imbalance. We've been asking our citizens in Barbados to pay more taxes. We've been asking our citizens, and I say we, I mean as the Parliament of Barbados, for the last 10 years. Taxes have come and they have gone. Some cannot even be implemented. But ministers of finance successively in the last administration, sir, have come to this place and said, pay more taxes. We've had Minister of Finance come to this place, Mr. Speaker, sir, and tongue-in-cheek stand almost where I am standing now, give or take a seat, and say, tell me what is that we should shut down or who we should send home. Tell me who we should send, tell us where we should shut down. You heard the debate, Mr. Speaker, sir. You used to hear him. You were present in this House. You've been about here for a long time. Glibly. But so we should send home the people from the polyclinic? Huh? We should send home, you want to send home people there at schools? The teachers should belong home? Who is that want to go home? Shut down CBC? That is how we use it. Yeah, I'll pull his collar. and Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality is that the fact of the matter is that Barbados was leaving money on the table. Now, I feel that it is correct to say that we had come to a point where we were looking at a crisis. For those who are not yet convinced, let me be a little bit more clear, because I am mindful of the fact that there was considerable pushback when this commission was first announced. And by the end of today, I hope that the people of this country who care to spend a little bit of time thinking things through will have come to understand why we have done that which we have done, and now why we are better equipped to identify with pellucid clarity a way forward. The evidence suggests, Mr. Speaker, sir, that cruise tourism in 2005 earned Barbados $57 million. In 2005, Barbados earned $57 million from cruise tourism. In 2015, Mr. Speaker, sir, Barbados earned $57,300,000. Let me say that for you again. In 2005, Barbados earned $57 million United States currency from cruise tourism. In 2015, Barbados earned $57,300,000 United States dollars from cruise tourism. So that over a decade, sir, we were able to say we had 33% more arrivals, but the benefit to the country was $300,000 United States dollars. Now, if you factor in inflation, the cost of everything in this country goes up. Very infrequently will it come down. You factor in, Mr. Speaker, sir, you factor in the inflation over the 10-year period. Barbados did not have receipts that suggest growth, nor stagnation. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, Barbados' receipts reflected that we were in a recessionary trend with regard to the cruise sector, and that cruise was simply not earning any money and not paying any bills, or not paying bills in a satisfactory way to recompense the wider society. It may have been paying bills to satisfy one or two people who are well positioned within the sector. But that is another matter that we're going to have to speak about today. So that, Mr. Speaker, sir, in view of our history of deteriorating patterns of spend, it was my judgment that we had to assess how that pattern, and this was put before me, you have deteriorating pattern of spend, a trajectory that's going in the wrong way. But the first concern I have, before I rush to judgment about the land of my birth, because I carry, you know, I hear them, but I carry a Barbados passport and a Barbados passport alone. So when I see Barbados not doing well, it humbugs me too. And I want us to understand that sometimes you got to take off the political hat a little bit now and let us start to work through the issues in a nationalistic way that help us to reflect, Mr. Speaker, sir, on issues of our sustainability of development. Issues, sir, that reflect, sir, on how best we can make sure that everybody in Barbados gets a fair share in the economic pie. And make sure, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we don't live in a land of make-believe, an alternative reality, where some people are doing well and many are not doing at all, and you convince yourself that a sector is working for the country. And I want to say to you, Mr. Speaker, that once I recognize the domestic situation, my next question is, well, let's look at the region. Let me see what it is that the region's performance is reflecting. Is this something that is a pattern across the industry, the cruise industry across the Eastern Caribbean? Is it something that is peculiar? Is it a phenomenon peculiar to Barbados, sir? And I have to do that because we are offering a commercial proposition. We are running a commercial product. And we take public funds and we spend it on marketing. We commit every year in March during the estimates that a certain amount of $1 million will be committed to the marketing of Barbados internationally, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I am determined that the public must see a return on their investment. And what bothered me, sir, is that when I look at the trajectory of spend over the last decade coming out of the cruise sector, I was not satisfied that the public of Barbados was getting a return on their investment. Even though there are a lot of people who appear to be living very comfortably out of their direct and indirect relationship to that which tourism in Barbados is being funded for. And that, sir, bothers me. So I go back, sir, to the data. And if it strikes you, Mr. Speaker, you've been in this house now for nearly 30 years. A long time.
25.
25.
Almost.
And I don't have to tell you, because I've been here, Mr. Speaker, sir. I've been not in here, but on the precincts between here and the other place for 17 years now. And I know, Mr. Speaker, and I believe that you will be able to confirm, that, you know, here, this approach to a tourism debate is, in your time and mine, without precedent by a minister. Because the minister has never been encouraged to come and talk to the country about the nuts and bolts, dollars and cents issues that we needed to be talking about. and have failed to be talking about, Mr. Speaker, sir, for too long. That's why we were in danger of being caught napping. In 2015, Mr. Speaker, sir, the average expenditure per passenger, as I told you, fell from $78.03 in 2000, fell to $78.03 from $111.82 in 2005. At that time, Barbados ranked 15th out of 35 destinations in the Caribbean for passenger spending. I want, Mr. Speaker, sir, to make sure that everybody in the country understands, and I invite them to go online and do a little bit of research so that we can all walk hand in hand harmoniously in this matter. There is an entity called the Business Research Economic Advisory Forum, BREA. It operates out of New Jersey in the United States of America. But they provide economic analysis, economic consultancy services. And every 3 years, they produce a report on the tourism performance in cruise for this region. You wouldn't have heard that before, Mr. Speaker, sir, because my predecessor never chose to condescend to this kind of discussion.
It says Barbados what?
BREA, Business, not Barbados, Business Research Economic Advisors. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, their 2015 publication indicated that 35 destinations would have been researched. That is a standard that is unfailing across all of the publications that the Business Research Economic Advisory Group does. They look at 35 destinations across the Caribbean, Latin America. Our spend, as I tell you, Mr. Speaker, sir, in 2015 had dropped to $78.03. And at that time, we were ranked 18 out of 35 destinations in passenger spending. So we were in the bottom half. Yeah? As I said, my concern upon realizing that is to say, well, is something wrong with Barbados? In ordinary layman language, what's going wrong here? What happened across the rest of the Caribbean? And so therefore, you take an assessment now of what's happening in the Caribbean. Well, lo and behold, here in the Caribbean, these are the people who we're competing against. Some are on the same Southern Caribbean, depending on what line you use. They may call it an Eastern Caribbean, they may call it Southern Caribbean itinerary. So, for example, the Carnival cruise line ship that will leave here now on Friday, when it used to leave here on Wednesday, would pass through St. Martin on the same itinerary as us. St. Martin, sir, spend, while we were down at $78.03, St. Martin's spend was $191.28 US per passenger. $113 more than Barbados. That's St. Martin. Well, all right. The same cruise line, on the same itinerary, the same ship, would go through the US Virgin Islands and stop at St. Thomas. St. Thomas's average passenger spend was $150 United States dollars and 21 cents in 2015, compared to Barbados's $78.03. So that, Mr. Speaker, sir, St. Thomas would have been earning $72, $73 United States more than us. Fine. The same cruise line, Mr. Speaker, sir, the same Carnival, on the same itinerary, also stops in St. Kitts. And in 2015, Mr. Speaker, sir, St. Kitts's passenger spend average was $116 United States dollars. Barbados is $78.03. Little St. Kitts. Little St. Kitts here. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, these are all on the same itinerary. These are the people we are competing against. You can't just come here and stand up and say, oh, we get record numbers. Yes, the itinerary brings the numbers to everybody. The same 800,000 people that was, or not same 800,000 because we get from a cross-section of ships, but the same 3,000 people that are on that ship, or 2,000 people on that ship, on the itinerary are going to stop in St. Lucia, stop in St. Kitts, they're going to stop in Antigua, wherever else the ship's stopping. So all of them get the same people. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, what did they spend when they got to the port? And that was the part of the discussion that Barbadians were never being induced or encouraged to take part in. But we have to do it, because the solution to the pain in the country must not be to tax people more. It cannot be. It cannot be for Minister of Finance, God bless his heart, as he then was, to come and say, my Tamaho has to send home. It could not be that. The solution had to be, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we earn our way out of difficult situations. And the conversation that did not take place in Barbados is how we can so structure and reposition the cruise sector as a vital component part of our broader tourism industry so that we could generate more revenue for this country. Keeping your constituents, Mr. Speaker, sir, the leader of the opposition's constituents, Mr. Speaker, sir, and mine, in a situation where they do not have to be taxed beyond their ability to bear it. Mr. Speaker, you go into the Northern Caribbean, Jamaica was earning $120 US on average in 2015. We down at 78. Cayman Islands, $119 US. We down at 78. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the decline in visitor expenditure, therefore, on the basis of the data, the decline in visitor expenditure, therefore, sir, cannot be industry-wide. I think you can agree with that.
Yes.
It is not industry-wide. It has to be something, sir, that we are confronting, which is peculiar to the situation in Barbados. And therefore, the next question for me as minister had to be, well, what then does the pattern of decreasing spend say about the perception of my country and its tourism product? Because people spending money everywhere else, but they spend money here. I think I have a duty, and I would have hoped that people who came before me would have had a duty to say, but we'll start a little bit. What is this saying to me about the perception they have of what we are offering? As the Honourable Member for the City just said, it is about our product. It is about what we do to induce people to get off a boat. And we can talk about that too. But you can't talk about it sensibly or seriously unless, Mr. Speaker, sir, you have the data in order to help you make informed decisions about what you're talking about. And this House, sir, I take the opportunity today to present your House with the fullest possible disclosure of the data that is coming out of the studies and that informed this Cruise Commission report. And perhaps, sir, the most dramatic and damning of the statistics that we have at our disposal, sir, is the level of satisfaction expressed by visitors in surveys with regard to the purchased tours. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me say this. I have thought about the Business Research Economic Advisory Body's report that comes out every 3 years. But you know, Mr. Speaker, that is not the only entity that has taken some issue and some concern with how we perform. And this is why I say that the country now must really pause and start to reflect a little bit on how you can become a little bit more cerebral, as in mental agility and mental focus, a little bit more intellectual about how we are doing some of the most important business in Barbados. I begin, sir, with the Duke University. Duke University commissioned a study on tourism performances in this region and looked at Barbados and Barbados's position in the tourism value chain, global value chain. And all of the concerns coming out of the Business Research Economic Advisory study are reflected in the Duke University study. But Duke University study would have been around 2016. But you know, Mr. Speaker, sir, even if the government of the day chose not to take on them because them as foreigners, and we've heard that kind of claptrap in this House before. When you're taking on, you're not taking on the credit rating reports because some of them, you know, have got foreign interests. But Mr. Speaker, sir, you know the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, led at the time by Dr. Kerry Hall, did a study on Barbados cruise tourism's performance and an assessment of what the visitors were thinking and feeling about Barbados's cruise tourism. And Mr. Speaker, if you read it, you are seeing coming out of it all the concerns that come out of the Duke University report, all the concerns that come out of the BREA study, statistical data. So it isn't to say that there was that the administration should have been strange to these developments, Mr. Speaker, sir. I have said, and I don't want to be political in this debate, I really will not be beyond this point. I did say many years ago that the honourable member who preceded me, the only book he read was a bank book. And it perhaps may have been more true than I thought. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, we are, in the ministry. But he too, but in the ministry. But, you know, Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality is that we can't do this business now. And I don't want to be glib about it. It is not a matter for, in fact, really it's a matter for solemn engagement. We can't do this business if we cannot make the time to do the assessment seriously. And as far back as 2008, the Business Research Economic Advisory, I tell you, they come out every 3 years, 2005, 2008, 2008. As far back as 2008, sir, they were ranking Barbados at 10 out of 35 destinations with respect to satisfaction by visitors about our tourism, about their experience. Their experience is our product. They get off the ship to experience Barbados. We are selling them a product offering. And they say, okay, in 2008, 10 out of the 35, on average, this is where we stood, the feedback that you got. But by 2015, Mr. Speaker, sir, the same study was telling you that we were ranked 24 out of 35. So it should have been cause for pause to say, well, look, we are going in the wrong direction, folks. It should have meant that an alarm bell goes off and that the minister would come to the House and say, look, the country has a challenge that we must confront in similar fashion that we have done within the first year of the life of a new administration, Mr. Speaker, sir. But I want this House to reflect a little bit on the relevant history that brought us to the point where, in 2015, Barbados, which prides itself as being a marquee destination. If you read the marketing publications, Barbados is a marquee destination in the Caribbean. But your visitor survey tells you that 24 out of 35 destinations, that 23 out of 25 of 35 destinations get rated highly, more highly than you. But you can't seriously be marquee about anything there because you're in the bottom percentile. You're in the bottom third. And the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we should not be surprised that we came to that point. When the leader of government business and I were in the other place together, she will recall that there was a debate that took place on tourism when we had to challenge the then administration about the failure to come to terms with some fundamentals about the environment within which tourism was functioning in Barbados. And we didn't just get it to keep noise. We did so on the basis of this yellowed and aged document that I have in my hand. An aid memoir on the state of the Barbados economy back in 2011, Mr. Speaker, sir. And the study I'm telling you about is a 2015 study that tells you that we fell down in terms of our product to 24 out of 35. And this is what the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association directed to the government of the day as a clarion call, a warning. You're heading in the wrong direction. That there is, in our view, a crisis with the attractions in Barbados. Operators of cruise vessels especially have opined, that means expressed the opinion. They have opined that there is a dearth of attractions for visitors who have visited on a multiple of occasions. These cruise vessels are the same cruise ships that we're talking about here today, Mr. Speaker, sir. In the last 5 years, we have lost several attractions. Example, Ocean Park, Graham Hall Nature Sanctuary, Bajan Helicopters, Sea Spy, Ocean Challenge, MV Harbour Master, ATV Limited, Horizon Helicopters, and they go on. That was what was said in 2011-12, Mr. Speaker, sir. No doubt, if I go back and did a little bit more research, I would find that there would have been some dismissive comment made by either the Prime Minister or the Tourism Minister. But by 2015, the statistical data was telling us that the people who matter most were publishing about Barbados, that the marquee destination had fallen to a level of visitor satisfaction that was 24 out of 35 possible destinations across the Caribbean. But the Hotel Tourism Association back then went on. It pointed to a number of barriers to attracting new business. And you know, Mr. Speaker, I go back, I mentioned just now the BTPA Cruise Audit Report. They also speak to this matter. I mentioned, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Duke University study. They also speak to these matters. And what are the matters that these entities have been speaking to? Raised even before them by the Barbados Hotel Tourism Association. And I say all of this, sir, before I go into that, to point out that for those who clamor and go and sit down on a television program or go to a radio station and expect or speak as though they expect that by the wave, the stroke of a pen and the wave of a wand, neglect for nearly a decade can be undone and replaced and rectified within a year, that the time has come perhaps to pause that level of discussion a little bit and to reflect on more substantive issues, among which are the capacity of the country now to come back from the decline that it has been in, given the neglect that took place over the period of time. And that period of time has presented us with challenges, sir, which are severe. Not insurmountable, but severe. And what are some of those challenges, sir? The member for Christchurch West will smile if he heard that they began with the state of the dilapidation condition of the island of Barbados. The indiscriminate dumping of discarded motor cars that he, as minister, challenged and confronted and started to overcome within the first 3 months of his term in office. The unattractive hoardings on the south and west coast, the poorly paved roads. In fact, even as I came in here today, I pointed out to him, because I passed through my constituency and went down Hines Hill. And Hines Hill has been transformed. And I want, on behalf of the people from St. James, to thank the honourable member. The lack of transformed, not transmogrified. To transmogrify will make it ugly. So it's been transformed. Don't want to say transformed for the better. So they talk about the lack of distinctive road signs. Another challenge, Mr. Speaker, sir. They go on and talk about the fact that there needs to be a restructuring of the principal marketing agency, the Barbados Tourism Authority. And Mr. Speaker, sir, as you are well aware, this government has moved towards the fundamental transformation and restructuring of that, and that too is a matter that has been dealt with within the first year, and we are going to soon be able to go to the final stage of the announcement of the interests that we have on either side of a public-private partnership. Those discussions are ongoing. The conflict between town and country planning in terms of getting planning approvals, the conflict between town and country planning and the people in terms of the wait of time. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the honourable member for St. Michael South Central, she piloted in this place a few months ago new legislation dealing with town and country planning, Mr. Speaker. We've heard the Honourable Prime Minister say the legislation that we were dealing with is older than she is, for 2020 and beyond, unfit, unsuitable, unfit for purpose. And out of that new legislation, we were then able to bring a tourism investment conference here about 2 months ago. And be able to show people the opportunities that now exist for better returns on their investment by being able to go higher, have better access, therefore, sir, to a return on investment by stacking rooms, be more conscious in terms of how we are dealing with beachfront developments, et cetera, et cetera. And Mr. Speaker, the lethargy that the last administration engaged in has had a consequence. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. Now, sir, the reality is that as bad as it seems and has seemed throughout the course of that which I have presented to you, as bad as it has seemed, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is regrettably a need to tell you that it gets worse, because Barbados ranked in the bottom half of the 35 destination ranking compared to our peers across the Caribbean in several other categories, some of which there's really no excuse for. And that's why I say I want to speak to this country very candidly today, because the Ministry of Tourism cannot do everything. But as Minister of Tourism, I feel I have a duty to appeal to Barbadians, as I did last night, about things that only Barbadians can deal with themselves. And I feel, sir, that I must use this forum to appeal to the Leader of the Opposition to join with me in this effort to heighten and sensitize, heighten the awareness and sensitize the people of Barbados, to heighten the awareness and sensitize the people of Barbados to some of the challenges which we are facing in this country, especially in the tourism sector. Now, the people of Barbados have to understand as well that it is not only about the tourists, it is also about the way we treat ourselves. In St. Lawrence Gap on Saturday night, I went with some members of the ministry, including my Director of Tourism, Dr. Hall, and we engaged with some hoteliers, we engaged with restaurateurs, we engaged with vendors, we engaged with a cross-section, one or two residents, and looking at St. Lawrence Gap by night, I am told it was the first time that a minister had gone down there to do an engagement of that sort by night. But the truth of the matter is, sir, you can't deal with noise pollution in the Gap seriously unless you are in the Gap at night. You cannot deal, Mr. Speaker, sir, with the question of people reacting on the spot to harassment unless you are in the Gap by night. Well, I guess it can happen in the day too, but primarily it is a nighttime thing. And the fact of the matter is, sir, that there are certain categories of concerns that have been raised by the cruise lines, by people who are doing evaluation of Barbados's cruise experience and Barbados's broader tourism experience. There are categories of concerns that have been raised, sir, about which the ministry and the ministry alone cannot be the solution, but about which Barbadians must be the solution. And we have to talk to our people and to ourselves very frankly on these matters. One of the things that come out, sir, is this question of visitor harassment, but it ain't just about visitor harassment, it's harassment of women. No, sir, if a woman chooses, if she's a Bajan woman, endowed with the pulchritude of African ancestry, man, curvaceous, let's be real about it, and she chooses to walk down the road in a short pants, it is nobody's business what she may have on under the pants or how the pants fits her in your estimation. Keep your offensive and unsolicited opinion to yourself. It is nobody's business. But when it then comes to a point where it is laced with explicit sexual references, it is unnecessary, it is threatening, quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, sir, but it is compounded, it is made worse when we do this to visitors who, it is and compounded with physical contact, by even going to the physical contact, when we then do this to visitors as well. The fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are turning off people. And it is a level of disrespect, discourtesy, and a lack of dignity. And frankly, sir, it is not a masculine thing. It might be showing the fact that you are a male, that you can become sexually aroused or attracted. But the masculine thing now is that's all it is. But when you are a man, a real man, you should be able to control those emotions and that thinking. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality is that there is too much of that across Barbados. And it is a problem. The reports coming back from the hoteliers tell you, the cruise lines tell you, it is a problem, sir. But only we can deal with that. That ain't got nothing to do with no international economic and environment. That ain't got nothing to do with no recession anywhere. That is about how we treat ourselves and then how we want to turn around and treat other people. It got to stop. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that the shopping experience. You know, we ranked 18 out of 35 as a destination in 2015 with respect to our shopping experience. I have said that I'm going to engage the Chamber of Commerce, sir, and the process of discussions has begun, but I want to have a deeper and further dialogue on this question of the shopping experience across Barbados, because, sir, it does not strike me as logical that we can have the country with perhaps the most highly developed infrastructure and supporting services for shopping and commercial activities in the Eastern Caribbean, but yet still the shopping experience in Barbados is in the bottom half of the assessments being made about experiences in shopping. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, again, there are some components of that again, when you go into detail and you read through the analyses, you see what people are complaining about. And again, it's about how we treat one another. And I'm not entirely clear that I, by myself, have the solution. But I do know that the country, I am urging from this place, the country to join me, and indeed join the Prime Minister, who continues to say that there has now to be another component to politics, which is really about the values that we are putting abroad. And it is not just to tell people about morality, it's to tell people about value judgments. You have to greet people when they come to your place and tell them at least good morning. You have to take an interest in people who are taking an interest in your product. And when we started Festive Friday, I remember the first evening I was down there, and members from the ministry staff are present, nodding their heads. They remember. I stood at a stall talking to a lady, and I saw a visitor come and sample some earrings. She took the earring up, she looked at the mirror, she put the earring to the side of the ear, and so on. And the operator of the stall didn't look at her, didn't speak to her. By that time, I had finished my conversation. I'm just watching this now. Another lady in the stall there sitting down. Nobody moved, nobody said a word. The lady tried on another pair of earrings, or not try on, tried another pair of earrings next to her. Nobody said a word. She asked a question, she got the most brusque and dismissive answer. And I made it my business to point out that, you know, if we ain't beg you to come here, though. If you didn't want to come here to sell things, you didn't have to come, because there got other people who would come. I be real, and I'm unapologetic for being real. I am me. I am going to pretend we didn't beg anybody to come and participate so they could put food on their children's table. We said that we would do what no other administration in Barbados cared to do, which was to make sure that there was an opportunity for vendors in Barbados to be connected and indexed to the tourism sector. And if it is that you come there, but that you ain't going to try and make an effort, but that got to be at you. But clearly that got to be at you. And I said so. I said, well, you know, if tonight now, the lady down the road, and I pointed her out, who went through, in my presence, the packaging of a lovely piece of craft. She packaged it. They stood up together. The visitor herself stood up together, arm around one another, and said, Minister, take a picture. They took the picture of them. They exchanged WhatsApp information and Facebook information, so they'd be in touch with one another. When she go back to Miami, she said, well, I can put this on my mantelpiece, and I go tell everybody. So I compare the experiences. I say, you know what, but if tonight now she goes home with a full pocket, and you go home with nothing, who you going to blame? So you got to make an effort. And the answer was, well, Minister, if you consider my pocket, well, you don't buy things. So therefore, but that's real. That's real. So therefore, I say again, there are some things that we as Barbadians have to deal with. And perhaps it is that this is a process where you have to hold people's hands. We are trying to build or refresh a culture in this country, and we're trying to carry people to a level of independence and entrepreneurship that perhaps they have not been carried to before. And I am perhaps the most patient person understanding and all of that. But I do say, without fear of contradiction, Mr. Speaker, sir, and without any apology whatsoever, all of us in Barbados got to play our part in this journey, though. All of us have to be prepared to play our part in this journey, because we are as strong as the weakest link amongst us. And that is where the Prime Minister is entirely right when she talks about the need for us to bring a broader and newer perspective to this business that we call politics, and what it is doing in terms of our interaction with people. The shoreside welcome. Now the cruise lines evaluate. And I'm not sure how many people in Barbados know this. The cruise lines evaluate the initial shoreside welcome, so that when you see that in 2015, our position was 20 out of 35 in terms of the initial shoreside welcome. Well, when I grew up, sir, and indeed when all of us in this house grew up, we were 166 miles long and a mile wide. Sorry, 21 miles long and a mile wide. I beg your pardon. That's what they used to tell us. Barbados, 21 miles long and a mile wide. Well, you know, the smile seems to have been disappearing. Now, again, it ain't necessary about the smile, because nobody is saying to be just going to skin your teeth and whatever. But, sir, there has to be a warmth of reception. There has to be an understanding that you are in a hospitality sector. And in a hospitality sector, you're dealing with people, and people dealing with you. You're not dealing with cattle. You're expected, sir, to show some empathy, to show some ability to relate to human beings. And the fact of the matter is, sir, that the initial shoreside welcome in Barbados, whether we choose to accept it or not, is not viewed by the cruise lines as being the best that it can be. Now, sir, in addition to that, we have the question of the courtesy of store employees, to which I referred tangentially just now, and that is rated at 25 out of 35. That is now in the bottom one-third, Mr. Speaker, sir. Access to craft and cultural product, 26 out of 35, again in the bottom one-third. And perhaps, sir, that explains why, and I can speak to it a little bit more later on, there was the sense of urgency that I felt about the festive Friday. And I am glad, I am genuinely glad, that the leadership of the opposition has taken not only interest but even ownership of the concept. And I want, Mr. Speaker, sir, to again engage, because this is not and cannot be a politically partisan matter. This is a matter, sir, about which Barbados as a whole must speak with one voice. But those pieces of statistical data, sir, explain why we cannot turn away just because we hear the atmospheric noise of criticism about the creation of this commission. This commission, sir, was critical because of the fact that it was able to highlight to us and put us in a position where we can highlight to each other as a country and to all who are stakeholders within the country that there was genuinely a state of deep concern and crisis. Now, the diagnosis, Mr. Speaker, sir, has to continue. There is an astonishingly low level of cruise passengers who are purchasing organized shore excursions. Barbados, sir, the number of Barbadians purchasing shore excursions ranks in 2015 at 30 out of 35 destinations. Now, what does that mean? It means, sir, that people are on board a cruise ship, and before they have cruised, they have not made arrangements to purchase a tour in Barbados. And when they have cruised and they are on the ship, and they may purchase a tour, they may not. But that when compared to the wider Caribbean and Latin America, we are at position 30 out of 35 in terms of the amount of people who are making it their business to get off a ship and experience this place. And Mr. Speaker, that didn't happen overnight. That did not happen overnight. That is a process that took time to come to that sorry position. And yes, there are a company or two that would be doing well out of this business. But Mr. Speaker, sir, the product that we call Barbados, though, is a product that goes right across this island. When I hear the Honourable Member for St. Philip North speak about things that people in her constituency are doing and interested in doing and would want to do, but if nobody is choosing to get off of a ship because of bad experiences, whether those bad experiences, Mr. Speaker, sir, be the reports you get from your shopping or the reports that you get from interaction with people in stores, or whether it is because of the fact that your shoreside welcome turned you off. And as I said, I have been to other places. I understand how people go out of their way. I understand how people go out of their way to make visitors feel welcome once they arrive in the country. I can take you out of the Caribbean. I take you, Mr. Speaker, sir, to a time I went to Japan. Not even the welcome, but the departure. You know, Mr. Speaker, I will never, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, as long as I live, I will never forget the shock I had leaving Japan, sitting in the aircraft and looking down at the tarmac as the plane was pushing back, and seeing all the mechanic crew that worked on the aircraft standing side by side, shoulder to one another, and waving goodbye. I will never forget it, sir, because I've never seen it anywhere else in the world. Wow. The people from the BTPA keep telling me, Minister, it is about finding a way to leave people with the wow experience. And that is what is missing. That we have to find a way to make people feel and say to themselves, wow, I never experienced that before. It means something. And it means something even more in today's day and age, sir, when everything is an Instagram-friendly moment. So you see something that's special that you never experienced before, and what do you do, sir? You pick up this here, you pick it up, and you take a picture, and you send it all around the world. And you get all the likes, etc., etc. And the phone blowing up. Wait, you know what they're doing in Barbados? You know what they're doing so-and-so, so-and-so. But that is an experience, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is exceptionally important. Now, I don't want to say all is bad, because on sometimes you do get the wow experience. I was impressed beyond belief the other day, sir, when I sent a WhatsApp from the airport, and they had some British tourists there. You know, there is a piano now in the departure lounge, and there were some British tourists there playing on the piano, and a group of them standing around the piano, all of them singing Beautiful Barbados. And it was exceptionally touching, you know. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, the point that I am making is that this cannot be a game of hit and miss. And that even though it does seem exceptionally simple, or perhaps too simple to even have to be raised in this place, the fact is that it finds its way into the reports that cause people to gauge performance and cause people to react to the performance levels that we are reported on. And to the extent that they all add up, they send a signal that says Barbados is guilty of having a poor perception of its tourism product, that Barbados is guilty of having a limited amount of diversity. It sends a message that says that Barbados ain't got nothing to do, so why get off the ship? And if we are true to ourselves, Mr. Speaker, sir, all of us within earshot of my voice have heard a Bajan say, Barbados boring or ain't got nothing to do. All of us have heard it. So the question is, sir, what do we now do about it?
That's the question.
And it's not only going to be about government finding a way to do everything. It has to be about having a facilitative environment which allows private enterprise to flourish and allows, Mr. Speaker, sir, for new attractions to be developed, allows for cultural development of the country in such a way that you incorporate not only the Barbadian people en masse, but the touristic aspect of the country's economy as well. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, one of the issues that obviously come about when I speak to the question of lack of diversity, is the issue of the way in which the business structure of the sector is engaged. And that is the part of this debate that I can really now come to talk straight talk. Because I want to begin by noting and congratulating and saluting the entrepreneurship. I note, I congratulate, I salute the entrepreneurship and the vision of the primary, what we would call in the sector, distribution intermediary, but that would be the person who, will be the primary tour operator, for want of a better way of putting it. That would be the correct turn of phrase in Barbados. Or the entity. Now, this entity, sir, need not be named here, but we all know of its might in the Barbados economy. It is a domestic enterprise. About that, we must be proud. It is employing Barbadians and doing well for itself, and about that, we must be proud, and we must lend them encouragement. It is, Mr. Speaker, sir, an entity that has offered substantial development to the cruise sector, sir, as a whole. It offers integrated services across the whole supply chain in tourism, so that, Mr. Speaker, this entity is involved in attractions, it is involved in ground transportation, it will be involved, Mr. Speaker, sir, in transportation of luggage, it is deeply involved in the air-to-sea transfers, it is involved in shore excursions. If you want portside entertainment, it is involved in that too. Logistics involved in home porting. This is a mega enterprise, Mr. Speaker, sir. But the reality is that the size of the enterprise alone creates an interesting challenge for the policymaker. And this, again, is a matter that we have not chosen to discuss in Barbados, at least at this level. And all too often, the people of the country engage in discussions, whether it be in a transport board bus, in a haircutting salon, or in a supermarket, sir. But we in here make the mistake of not reflecting the discussion that our people are having. We're going to have the discussion, sir. Because what we're talking about with an entity that is involved in so many different things, attractions, ground transportation, luggage, shore excursions, logistics and home porting, entertainment, etc., etc. Sir, you are talking about consolidation of opportunity. And let us get now to where we were, all of us, where we all were when we campaigned, sir. Because we all in this place spoke to the concerns about an economy of Barbados which reflected consolidation of opportunity. We were concerned, Mr. Speaker, and are concerned about consolidation of wealth, consolidation of access to opportunity. All of these things, sir, equal one thing: a structural impediment in the Barbados economy to growth. A structural impediment to growth. You can't talk about going into a growth trajectory if the opportunity for growth is consolidated in the hands of a too few. And Mr. Speaker, sir, for that, let me just say to those who will rush now, within earshot of my voice, to picking up the phone out of mischief, that I do not blame the business enterprise for this. I do not. I can't blame the commercial entity, Mr. Speaker, sir, because commercial entities do not set public policy. I have to blame, Mr. Speaker, sir, the people who set public policy. And the challenge of consolidation of wealth, consolidation of opportunity, consolidation of access to financial, financial opportunities, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is another thing that did not emerge accidentally. And if you study sustainable development in small societies and small economies, sir, you will find that inequality is often the direct result of deliberate policy choices. I say that again. Inequality is often the direct result of deliberate policy choices. It may be a policy choice of a fiscal nature, and we have seen it in the reverse. This political party, of which I am proud to be part, Mr. Speaker, sir, made certain fiscal policy interventions in the public transportation sector so as to ensure that we could have minibuses in Barbados that were owned by people, sir, that look like you and me. We, sir, also understood that, that the solar water heating industry had potential for massive takeoff and potential for Barbados, and that was, again, a fiscal policy intervention in that sector. Inequality can be the result of fiscal policy. It can be the result of a regulatory environment and regulatory policy. How you regulate or how you choose not to regulate. What you regulate or what you choose not to regulate. The degree to which you regulate certain things, Mr. Speaker, sir. And again, we know that there are many areas in Barbados' economic activity where the regulatory environment has been a little bit lax and a little bit loose, and the intention perhaps behind that was to make sure that you give a certain player from a certain category of the society an opportunity to grow and get a foothold. Mr. Speaker, sir, it can also be about your administrative practices and how you choose to intervene administratively. It is my judgment, sir, that there is a combination of all of these approaches that has led to a weakening of opportunity and a deterioration of market access opportunity, specifically for new and small intermediaries and concessions who are trying to get into the business of offering tours to tourists coming off of ships. Now, I believe, sir, that the sector has to be the beneficiary of a transformative vision. The sector has to be transformed. Again, the Prime Minister's words come to mind. You know, our Prime Minister has said to us that the mission was never just to come and stop the bleeding. The mission was never to just stop the hemorrhage, but that we were to go on to do a transformative mission in Barbados. You ain't just coming to stop the decline and the bleeding and then put everything down. How then do you transform? And that is what this debate really has to be about now. Now, as with every sector of the Barbadian economy, and we said this again when we were campaigning, and I want to be entirely faithful to it, as with every sector of the Barbadian economy, we have to ask ourselves some key questions, Mr. Speaker, sir, about why we are going to do the things that we have to do. The first question is, what is the public interest that we want to protect? And my colleagues would have heard the Prime Minister make that observation several times. What is the public interest that you want to protect? The public interest in this case, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the image of cruise tourism in Barbados. The public interest, sir, has to be that we want a cruise tourism sector that reflects a broader base of participation by the citizens of this country from all walks of life as stakeholders. The public interest, Mr. Speaker, sir, has to be that we want deeper and more meaningful competition in the Barbados economy with respect to cruise tourism, and that we want greater access to opportunity for all people from all walks of life in Barbados with respect to having a chance to participate in cruise in this country. So we want, Mr. Speaker, sir, the public interest is participation being broadened, opportunity being increased, Mr. Speaker, sir, and to have a competitive environment. That's what the public interest is. The Prime Minister will tell you then that the next question you got to ask yourself is, what is the public mischief that you are protecting against? And the public mischief, Mr. Speaker, sir, really is the exact opposite of what I just said. That there is a clear and present danger of consolidation of opportunity, consolidation of wealth, consolidation of access to the market, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the cruise tourism intermediary sector. That sector of people who intermediate between the ship and the people of the country and the products of the people of the country. And Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that if you have a statistic that suggests that 80% of the cruise business in Barbados is in the hands of one entity, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is not a declaration of war on the entity. That is a reflection, sir, of the concern that the country must have about too much consolidation and the need for us to grow the business so that that entity can also see growth while other people, sir, can get a foothold and grow as well and become involved as well and be stakeholders as well and bring creativity and new ideas and new approaches and refresh the whole process, sir. It is not about suffocating or sussing out the life of anybody, but it's about broadening the base of participation and making the country's economy as a whole more competitive. The risk, in my judgment, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the national economy arising from danger of limited diversity in a key sector such as the cruise tourism sector is a serious risk. And then, sir, there's a risk as well to the reputation of the sector. If people abroad feel that the sector is not entirely reflective of all that Barbados has to offer. If people who are offering tours to Barbados, if people, and let us understand the world in which we live, the vertical integration. You know, the airlines that come here marked to we. They come here, sir, and they put people on a ship marked to we. The people well in Barbados, sir, want to know that they have an opportunity to experience Barbados in its widest way and widest range. But what would worry them is if they feel that there is a limitation on that which their visitors can offer because their visitors can get a menu of options because there is a closed shop in the country. And that, sir, is something that we have to guard against. Now, in doing so, this cabinet has agreed that there's a third question that has to be asked. And that question is, what are the special interests, if any, that have to be protected as we go about this process of transformation? Are there any special interests, Mr. Speaker, sir? My friend, the Leader of the Opposition, seems vacant on the matter, but I will assist him. The special interest has to be the taxi operators in Barbados, because from the time I know myself, they have been helping move people around this country, carrying them on tours, helping them connect with all the product in Barbados, in every nook and cranny of this country, whether they are owners of the product or not. And in 99.9% of the cases, they are not the owners of the product. But they are carrying people to all the product, wherever it is found, in every constituency, in every village, in every district. So that is why, Mr. Speaker, sir, the closed shop will not work well for the economy. Nothing against the company that has been able to grow and develop and employ and do all the great things it has done. But we have now to look at this in a holistic national way. And in a holistic national way, Mr. Speaker, sir, it means that we must come face to face with the reality that Barbados's tourism, cruise tourism product has to reflect a level of diversification and a diversity that is reflective of our people. That it doesn't really matter whether you own the attraction or don't own the attraction, but you must connect the tourists to the attraction. It don't matter whether you sponsor the tour or don't sponsor the tour, but you must connect the visitor to the opportunity for the tour. It don't matter, Mr. Speaker, sir. It doesn't matter, Mr. Speaker, sir, whether you have any influence over the commercial enterprise out there that is in business to provide some sort of entertainment or cultural experience to the tourists. What matters is that the tourist has access to the cultural entertainment experience. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to bear in mind those people, and I say those people are the taxi operators in Barbados, operating from the Bridgetown port, because their entire experience has been, their entire livelihood has been exactly what we are talking about when we talk about diversifying and broadening the base of participation. But here's the rub. And that's why I began on the note of statistical data, Mr. Speaker, sir, because it is only when you've taken the time to understand the statistical data, sir, that you understand the nature of the challenge that is confronting your country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. And I say to your House, sir, that if you look at the data, it is telling you that the same taxi operators that we have in Barbados in 2015, the research in economic advisory data was indicating those same operators providing a service to people on the dock. You get off the ship, you want something to do, but you have not booked or engaged with anybody in an organized structure, but you too are a passenger. You too got little money in your pocket. In fact, you might got more money in your pocket than the people that gone on a tour bus. And you too want to experience this phenomenon that we call Barbados, the marquee destination. But you know how much percentage of the business the taxi operators were getting, Mr. Speaker, sir? 3. And they tell me that we are not confronting a crisis in this country. How do you have 255 operators in the Bridgetown port, Mr. Speaker, sir, getting the benefit of 3% of the business? How do we have 255 operators in the Bridgetown port representing people from all of your constituencies in this House, Mr. Speaker, sir, and getting 3% of the business?
Wow.
But nobody in Barbados was being told that.
That's the wow.
Huh?
That's the wow.
If that is what,
The
sir?
3% is the wow.
3%, sir. That may have been the wow for those people. It's the wrong kind of wow. And I am not part of the politics of exclusion. In fact, if I remember correctly, sir, I associated myself with this party because of a politics of inclusion.
True.
And philosophically, Mr. Speaker, sir, philosophically it is wrong. It is a bad thing. Yeah. And I'm prepared to take on anybody on that. It is philosophically wrong because we will alienate too many of our own people in this country from economic opportunity. And this debate, therefore, sir, is about wealth. That's what the debate is about. It is about access to wealth. It is about access to work. That is what it is about, Mr. Speaker, sir. And if we are not prepared to see it in that context, sir, we are fooling ourselves. It is a debate about wages. It's a debate about wealth, a debate about work for small and micro business people, Mr. Speaker. And tourism has to be there for them. You know what is the incongruity? You know what's the ugly aspect of this whole thing? That this is supposed to be the lead sector. And we tell people, leave your little children home on an evening and go and do an evening shift in a hotel. Go in a restaurant, your girl child home with her stepfather. Get up at 6 o'clock in the morning? No, get up at 4 in the morning and get to the hotel by 6 because to go have breakfast. Find your way home as best you can at 11 o'clock at night. That's what we tell our people. Hundreds of them, Mr. Speaker, if not, and thousands, not hundreds, and thousands, hundreds, and also thousands. And, Mr. Speaker, they do it. But there has to be a return for them because they are stakeholders in the process. This is about bringing equity to the people of this country, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the sector that is the lead sector in Barbados must be seen to be bringing that equity. And if the lead sector is not seen and felt and understood to be bringing that equity, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, the sector is failing the country. It cannot only be, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it is a project run for foreign entities, by foreign entities, on behalf of foreign entities, for the benefit of foreign entities, and all we about here, sir, is to get the scraps. And therefore, sir, that enfranchisement that the Prime Minister keeps talking about comes to mind. The empowerment that the Prime Minister keeps talking about comes to mind. And it must happen in not just tourism, in every one of the sectors that are seen as earning money for this country. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say that it is not only bad that the taxis represented 3% of the business bought onshore. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, the studies reflect that Barbados has a very interesting position in this regard as opposed to the rest of the Caribbean and Latin America. Everything I've said in this House today, Mr. Speaker, sir, has been buttressed by and against the research that is done in this sector. Every point I have made has been supported by the research in this sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, do you know what the research in this sector says about Barbados' position with regard to the way in which taxi operators are treated vis-a-vis the rest of the Caribbean? The 35 destinations across the Caribbean, how does Barbados stand when compared to the 35 destinations across the Caribbean with respect to the access that our taxi operators have to this crucial thing that we call cruise tourism, Mr. Speaker, sir? I will tell you, put on your seatbelt. Barbados, Mr. Speaker, sir, takes position 35 out of 35 across the Caribbean. Our taxi service providers are in the worst position to be found anywhere in the Caribbean. But then they tell me, sir, that I should not use the word crisis. I should not have said that there's a crisis in tourism. I should not have said there's a crisis in cruise tourism, Mr. Speaker, sir, because we have a mammoth that does exceptionally well, and I doff my cap. We have a behemoth in our midst that does exceptionally well, for which this country must be eternally grateful, because it reflects, and I'm sincere about it, it reflects a level of entrepreneurship, Mr. Speaker, sir, that's really second to none. But that works for the company and the company's affiliates. But there is a broader economy, though. There's a broader set of stakeholders, though, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. There's a broader society that must feed off of that which presents the most to the country. You know, if you watch National Geographic, sir, you're going to the water, the little water that left in the river to drink, and then you see the Lion King walk up, so everybody scamper, step back, and he walk and drink up all, and then when he walk off, and then the whole herd got to struggle for a few little sips. It can't be like that, sir. That is why there has to be, I'm very, very clear and careful about what I say. We didn't come here overnight. We came here because of a failure to properly regulate, whether it be via fiscal policy, whether it be via administrative practices, Mr. Speaker, sir. We came here because of a failure to properly intervene to ensure that there is a more level playing field in the market. And our duty now, sir, must be to make sure that the interventions are strategically done, not to snuff out anybody's business, but to make sure, sir, that opportunities are created for new business. Opportunities are created, Mr. Speaker. And you have to begin by making sure that the sector is healthy enough to bring more ships. That's the real thing, you know. That's the real point of departure, that the sector must be healthy enough and the products that we provide must be exciting and attractive enough that more and more demand will be generated about this phenomenon that we call Barbados the marquee destination. And once that phenomenon is driving demand, once the product is driving demand, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, the opportunities are there for all to live quite well and quite contentedly. And that is what this administration's interests are about. Now, sir, as I said, I am not comfortable with the idea that 255 taxi operators can get less than 5% or approximately 5% of the business. The BRIA report in 2018, the most recent of them, reflected that it was 5%. So we went up from 3 to 5. Hooray. But it can't be, it don't work for me, Mr. Speaker, sir. And, you know, as I said, it is about a debate that is really now about work and wages and opportunities for wealth. I I take the view, sir, that the time has now come for us to then discuss some solutions. As I said, we are looking at structural impediments to new entrants operating in the cruise tourism market, especially at the level of intermediaries or so-called operators. Now, with regard to the Bridgetown Port situation, Mr. Speaker, sir, there has been a request made to taxi operators to function and to collaborate with us in a cooperative style approach. The first thing we want to do, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to offer them the opportunity to build branded tours. The brand aspect is important because the cruise sector is a very formal and rigid sector. The cruise line industry is very formal and rigid, and you will understand why. You invest $5 or $6 or more billion in a ship. The ship is packed with passengers from all walks of life from all around the world. You bring them to a destination, Mr. Speaker, sir. You got to ensure that there is certainty of knowledge as best as possible with what you are inviting them to participate in and what you're encouraging them to participate in. And the cruise lines sell product on board the ship. So that is one of the challenges I'm coming to. They sell product on board the ship. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, so they are pushing certain types of products. And obviously, the more structured, the more well presented, the better the branded product, that is what they will promote to their guests. If you're all over the place and you appear to be totally in confusion, then, sir, they ain't taking you on. So we say that we want to brand the taxis, so they're empowered, sir, to offer branded tours. And what are these tours? We recognize that there are some things that the passengers like to do independently and should be encouraged to do because it also ties them into other parts of the Barbadian experience, which now are alienated or shut off because of the fact that the major tour operator or operators do not necessarily put them as part of what the tour experience is. So I may have a health and wellness experience somewhere up in St. Joseph, where people could come and go through a nature trail and drink some natural juices that I got making there on the spot, and interact, Mr. Speaker, sir, with some birds that I catch, and I got a little bird sanctuary that I put together. But nobody ain't taking me on with my nature trail and my bird sanctuary, because the big boys ain't seeing that as nothing. The big boys ain't see that is part of it. And you know why they ain't see that as part of it? Because the big boys ain't putting the money in it. That's mine. Who is me? Who is little me to come and step up in there? Because that ain't got nothing to do with me. So therefore, now I'm stripping it, Mr. Speaker, sir, of all the fluff that stops us from understanding clearly why poor people in Barbados are being kept down, why lower middle class people in Barbados are being suppressed, why even the middle class is oppressed, because, sir, there is a mentality that all is mine. It cannot work. It can't work. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, those tours will be like ecotourism, heritage, heritage. How are we going to come to the city? Heritage, Mr. Speaker, sir. And as I said, the health and wellness experience. And we're going to work with them, sir, so as to position them to be able to engage cruise lines. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the engagement of cruise lines. You know, I was in cabinet in 2003. And I remember sitting and learning a lot in cabinet at that time. And there was I genuinely, I said this in all seriousness, a genuinely passionate, and I suspect a genius for the tourism sector in terms of his ability and wherewithal, a gentleman by the name of Noah Lynch, sir. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, he always used to make the point that he would take taxi operators up to Florida Caribbean Cruise Association meetings. And the breaking point was in terms of trying to get them connected to the cruise lines. And the breaking point was this issue of insurance. Because, again, you are operating at international standards. And back then in 2005, 6, 7, we perhaps may not have been quite ready. Or maybe it is that we didn't do the whole hand-holding. But the international standards are rigid, and they are high. And they're structured, not for a small man, they are really structured, sir, for power players, financial power players. So you got to pay for the insurance thing, and you got to hold yourself, you got to pay the premiums, and you got to hold yourself accountable for a number of standards. I began this debate by saying that one of the things that we have to talk about in Barbados' tourism is the question of standards, and the way in which we enforce standards, set standards, maintain standards. I will digress just to make this point to you, sir, because I made it to the Hotel Tourism Association, and you're going to hear me in this house on this with legislation in the not-too-distant future. Because the time has come for us now to talk. I didn't come to talk about how much cows in the field. I'm not going to do it. Yes, maybe there are plenty of cows in the field, I observe that. But then let us see now how this is transitioning into milk and cheese and butter. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want the byproducts now. That's what the country got to be talking about. The dreaders too were right. And I am going to say, sir, you know, we had a situation in August of last year where a visitor came here riding a jet ski, and the jet ski turned over in St. Peter. And he and his, two on one, he and his girlfriend. And I got the call, Minister, 2 people missing at sea. I said, oh dear. The Coast Guard has been called? Yes, the Coast Guard are on the job. If we hear anything, Minister, we let you know, just letting you know, putting you when you know. 11 o'clock the night, I ain't hearing nothing now. I said, oh gosh, what happened? Oh dear, Lord have mercy. Phone rings. Minister, we had to call off the search. Too dark to do anything. I am now saddled with this here. A few months into becoming minister, and I am agitating and call the Prime Minister. You don't know, because you know, thinking about how you can break this here now to the rest of the family and blah, blah, blah. And then the phone rings, probably about 3 or 4 in the morning. Minister, we found the visitors. They washed ashore down in St. James, down by Weston. So you give thanks. But then the story is told that the jet ski turned over. One could swim, the other could not swim very well. The lady was not a strong swimmer. The man managed to help keep her afloat. But the problem really was the life-preserving equipment, which had dry rotted and fell apart in the water. Now, Mr. Speaker, so I talk about standards and regulatory environment. And the Ministry of Tourism is now working with Maritime Affairs and Small Business and Environment and all the other ministries, Mr. Speaker, sir, to try to find a way in which we can have a proper regulatory framework introduced to make sure that we do this business that is central to our best interest in the best way possible. Because if you don't have any regulatory environment with which you are operating, it's a free-for-all. So I could keep my life preserver vest however I feel like keeping them. And if it fall apart with somebody who need it desperately and the body drunk, oh Lord, that's not good enough. It exposes people to legal liability. It exposes the country to serious liability. And Mr. Speaker, sir, let us remember that it is only this morning that CNN and MSNBC were carrying the story of yet another death in the United States of America as a result of a calamity that is taking place at a resort in the Dominican Republic. The 9th death connected to that resort. An issue, sir, of people going to the resort, and there is something that they're experiencing in that environment that has led to serious sickness and 9 deaths. And again, the issue is in America, oh, well, I heard him on Morning Joe. Well, I don't know. I don't want to take the wind out of the tourism ministry in the Dominican Republic, but my family won't be going anywhere near there this year. And they will say so about anybody. We have to make sure that we're in a position where we do our best that they don't say so about us. But if we don't have the regulatory environment, as apparently the Dominican Republic did not deal with the regulatory environment properly, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is an issue. And so, again, I will not apologize to any of the bigwigs in Barbados tourism on this question about the need for us now to speak the language of standards and regulations. Because we are talking about a whole sector and a substantial piece of the country's economy. It employs indirectly and directly 54% of the people in Barbados, man. This isn't about your little shop no more. And so therefore we have now to speak a different type of language with the greatest possible respect. But as I said to you, Mr. Speaker, I digressed. The major impediment to new entrants in the tourism sector, the ground transportation sector, the tour operating sector, sir, is strict insurance liability standards. And those standards have to be kept and met in accordance with what the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association is laying down. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, these things are detailed. The amount of pressure per square inch, amount of pounds per square inch in the tires of the vehicle. The amount, the frequency with which you check the brakes of the vehicle. The fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the vehicle cannot be overloaded. The amount of luggage you may be carrying in the vehicle or passengers in the vehicle, in other words. When last the vehicle was serviced, the service regulatory standards. These are things, sir, that the average operator out there is not easily going to be in a position to do on his own and without assistance. So what we have to do, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to be the intermediary to help them get to the point that we want them to be. And at the port, sir, there's an agreement now that to help the taxi operators get the necessary insurances so that they can form, in the context of a cooperative effort, the kind of ground transportation unit that we want them to form, sir. Then, sir, we will carry the cost of the insurance commitments for the first year. Then after that, as the time goes by, you scale it down gradually because they get a little skin in the game, they're getting some revenue. It would be unconscionable to expect the public purse to carry a private entity's benefit, but the fact of the, or a private entity's responsibility. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, so we have to help them get into the market, and we have to hold their hands, and we have to carry them as mommy carried the baby for the first couple of months and years, so that you are in a position then, sir, to come to a point where you are competing. And that is the first approach. The other approach, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the question of facilitation. Now, you can't just be all over the shop on it. This party came to office after campaigning on the issue of business facilitation in Barbados. And we said without reservation to any who had ears to hear that business facilitation in this country had to mean more than just the concerns that the foreign investor has in order to get through immigration and to get through town planning requirements. But business facilitation must impact the ordinary man in the street. I am pleased to be in a cabinet with the Honourable Member for St. James North, my neighbour, both here and in terms of constituency, because he's put on the front burner this question of liquor licenses that is humbugging ordinary, poor, black, working-class Barbadians from making an honest living every weekend. Every weekend. So that gone forever, hopefully, are the days when you got to wait 5 and 6 months to get a liquor license about this place. And Mr. Speaker, sir, facilitation of business in this context. The vast majority of onshore attractions in the cruise industry are sold long before the ship arrives in port. In fact, sir, this is 2019 June. It would be correct to say that the vast majority for 2020 would have already been sold. They're seldom that far in advance because people book cruises well in advance, invariably. And we have to work with small tour operators in order to get them to understand that there's a technique to getting their cruise and their tour sold on board a cruise ship. And indeed getting their tour sold at the point of sale overseas. And that means, sir, that the work of the BTMI, the work of the Bridgetown Port, helping us to facilitate these things, sir, the small and micro business people, sir, have to be worked with to connect them to potential purchasers. As recently, sir, as this past week, I was chatting with the chairman of the Bridgetown Port on this matter. And we are now at a stage where, to help facilitate these small businessmen, offices that the BTMI has in Brussels, offices that the BTMI has in London, offices that the BTMI has in Canada, in New York, around the world, sir. We want to come to a point where if you come in there to find out about Barbados, that we can expose you to a virtual tour using the modern technology, a virtual tour of Barbados and of parts of Barbados. Farley Hill National Park, we tell them, man, listen, man, they got a cherry tree hill in the Farley Hill National Park and so on. Oh, I would like to see that. Well, look, I can give you a flyer. I can pull up the computer here, put on these goggles, and see it virtually. Experience the view virtually. There's a thing called Harrison's Cave. That sounds interesting. I'd like to see that. Help them to take a tour through Harrison's Cave virtually, Mr. Speaker, sir. Right. And help them then at the point where the decision is being made to connect to the small tour operator. To give those operators an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, sir, to break the ceiling that previously has been impenetrable. And I am saying to you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the question here really is really one of willpower. And we are at that point in this country. Are we determined that we are going to carry along the small and micro business people on this journey for national development, or are we not determined so to do? If we are determined that we're going to take them along, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, then everything in our power has to be done, I submit, in order to make sure that that can happen. No, sir, I can't speak to the question of solutions unless I speak to the issue of capacity. I can't speak to solutions at the port unless I speak to the question of capacity at the port. And the country would have heard during the life of the last administration about a project which is called Sugar Point. And the last administration, sir, did not condescend to speak with any clarity or specifics about Sugar Point, which was intended to be a cruise facility and cruise terminal. Now, I am very mindful, Mr. Speaker, sir, that arising out of a number of things done by the last administration, there are some legal issues that still have to be unraveled. When they raise their heads above the ramparts, they tend to forget the damage they did to the Barbados economy and the legal liability to which this country became exposed. The first thing, Mr. Speaker, sir, because I am mindful of the legal liability, and the ongoing matters which are sub judice, there was an Attorney General of the last administration who said that it is pronounced sub juicy, but it is really sub judice. But other fact.
It depends on if you're French or...
But other fact. A QC. They use a QC. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that because it is sub judice, you don't want to get too deeply into that. But the House must have, in the context of this discussion, some understanding of what has transpired and where we are. Now, there was an agreement, sir, that was made on the 29th of November 2013 between a company known as Sugar Point Marine Development Limited, and that was really to be a special purpose vehicle. The other party to that agreement was the Bridgetown Port Incorporated. And we all know what the Bridgetown Port is, and it obviously was an important component because they own the property and the assets pursuant to the Bridgetown Port Transfer of Assets and Management Act. And then the third party, sir, was the government of Barbados, acting in terms of the contract via the Honourable Richard Seeley, MP, Minister of Tourism and International Transport. And that agreement, as I said, sir, was signed by the Minister. I have it here on the 29th of November 2013. And following a public procurement process, Sugar Point was commissioned, that was the special purpose vehicle, was commissioned to construct a new cruise ship terminal for the port of Bridgetown. And the special purpose vehicle was supposed to have been the owner and the developer of the facility. And the financing costs were set at $205 million United States dollars. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I said to you, I do not want to go deeply into the weeds, but to make the larger point of governance, that after no movement took place, and nobody could understand why, around 2016, Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines would have written to the government of Barbados and observed that there was no movement and that nothing was materializing. And I'm going to come back to their letter. It has become clear, Mr. Speaker, sir, that arrangements were discussed or contemplated. Another developer, not the one I just referred to, but another developer, believes fervently that there was an intention to create legal relations between him and the same Bridgetown port. And that is what gives rise to the challenges that we now have. And that part of what he understands there was an intention to do would have been to renovate Shed 3 and destroy Shed 4 and enhance existing cruising facilities. So that you would have had, Mr. Speaker, sir, an express commitment in writing by way of a contract that I just pointed you to, sir, and then at best, or at a minimum, an implied contract to do similar type of work, albeit with a smaller scope. And the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, this has to be unraveled, because what it has saddled this new administration with is a situation in which there are no cruise facilities at all, but there's the exposure of the country to legal liability, because you had two competing commitments taking place at the same time, essentially for similar purposes at the same place. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the relevance of that really comes sharply into focus when one looks at the letter that Royal Caribbean wrote. And the relevant part of that letter, sir, is that Royal Caribbean says to the government of Barbados in 2016 that Royal Caribbean International continues to build Oasis and Quantum-class ships. And we foresee a time in the future where many, if not most, of our ships operating in the Caribbean will be these very large ships. Now, for your benefit, Mr. Speaker, sir, I pause there to say to you that the Oasis-class ship comes from the term Oasis of the Seas, which is a ship that Royal Caribbean built. It carries 5,400 passengers. They went a little bit bigger with a ship called Harmony of the Seas, which carries 5,496 passengers, and it has a sister ship also carrying 5,490 somebody called the Allure of the Seas. That is the Oasis class to which they speak. And they say that we will not be able to call in ports that do not have adequate infrastructure for these very large ships. In addition, our TUI brand is growing and is home porting in Barbados, despite the present poor operating conditions for ship turnarounds. TUI has the opportunity to grow with better infrastructure in Barbados. And then they go on to lament the state of affairs that is taking place at the Bridgetown port. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, what is the relevance of it to us? As I said to you, you make a commitment in 2012 that you are going to invest in new facilities. By 2016, there seems to be, and I put it no higher, there seems to be a change of direction, and that a new developer is in the picture, and that you are contemplating licking down Shed 3 or refurbishing Shed 3 and licking down Shed 4 and enhancing cruise facilities via a different method. And Mr. Speaker, sir, by 2018, when government changed, nothing had been done because top was spun in mud for 6 years. Nothing had been done, and the cruise sector's ability to facilitate and to accommodate an increasingly large number of larger ships is very limited. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me help you a little bit with the size of ships we're talking about. In 2016, there are 3 major players: Carnival, Norwegian, and Royal Caribbean in the world. They're globally. 3 major players globally. And in 2016, sir, they were ordering ships that the average size would have been around 1,800 to 2,000 passengers. Today, there are 32 ships on order to come on stream between those 3 major global players. Between 2020 and 2024, 32 ships are expected to come on stream. And each of them, Mr. Speaker, sir, is expected to carry approximately 4,000 passengers or more. As I said to you just now, you have the mega ships like the Oasis of the Seas and the Harmony, that Oasis class, which is carrying 5,400 and more. Now, the Bridgetown port, on its best day in home porting, sir, can turn around 10,000 people. I went there myself. I asked myself, what is the most that you have ever turned around in a day? Minister, 10 to 11,000 people, perhaps. But on any given day, sir, during a weekend period, you will find 4 ships berthed or more at the Bridgetown port. Now, if the carrying, and as the letter says, increasingly, these are the ships that will be coming here, or down this part of the Caribbean, coming down this part of the Caribbean. They don't have to come to Barbados, you know, because we could do until we put ourselves off the itinerary altogether. We could do or fail to do until when they dump us from the itinerary as they have dumped other people. And perhaps it's the first time that a minister is speaking to the House in this way, but it has to be said frankly. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, the ships that are coming are increasingly going to be carrying 5,000 and more. But the maximum capacity we have is to carry 10,000 people. But we got an itinerary that tells you you can go up with 4 that home porting. At 5,000 more, you got 20-something thousand passengers to turn around in the Bridgetown port, sir. That at its best day, given the configuration, given the constraints, given the logistics of the port today, Mr. Speaker, sir, not just today, but that the last government presided over for 7 years and did nothing about. And it is in writing, they signed the contract, Richard Seeley, that's his name. Had the contract, no, me can't call your name, that's your name, your mother call you so. Huh? Your mother call you so. Signed on behalf of the government of Barbados, acting through its Minister of Tourism and International Transport, signed on the 29th of November 2013, Mr. Speaker, sir. And nothing was done. And we come to a point, therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, where the capacity is the issue. Because you got ships that carry just under 6,000 people. You got an itinerary that says that you're going to have about 4 right now, unless you plan to dump them or they dump us. 4 or 5 people bringing a ship into Barbados over a weekend for home porting purposes. Then, Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality is, where do you fit these 25,000 people? And the fact is, you have a difficulty?
On what do you raise?
To interrupt the honourable member, doing so well. Please refer to some documents around which I wonder if the eyes of the opposition will be privy to that information.
You're going to make those a document of the House?
No, sir.
Thank you.
I had assumed I would make them a document of the House. Make them documents of the House. I had assumed my friend had remembered seeing them before.
Thank you.
But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that these are the issues of capacity, and that's what I want to bring the attention of the nation to. It isn't that there's a desire, sir, on the part of this government to go and engage in recklessness. I have no doubt that there's someone there who would say, but do we need a dedicated cruise pier, or do we need dedicated home porting facilities? I believe that that may be asked by people who genuinely do not know what awaits us around the corner. That those ships that are expected to come here, and I read the letter from Royal Caribbean, they continue to build Oasis and Quantum class ships. We can foresee a time in the future where many, if not most, of our ships operating in the Caribbean will be these very large ships. We will not be able to call in ports that do not have adequate infrastructure. So from their perspective, infrastructure is an issue. And from my government's perspective, therefore, sir, infrastructure must be an issue as well. And the capacity to turn around for home porting purposes, which is what should make the money in Barbados, and I'm going to come to that point, sir, is a critical thing. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, there are solutions that we can look at. One of the things coming out of the Cruise Commission report is the suggestion that we remove from the port infrastructure altogether those luxury ships that do not need and will not require a lot of logistics and so on for things like home porting and that kind of stuff. And that those luxury ships, sir, that carry 1,500 to 2,000 passengers could be berthed in the north of Barbados. We have actually gone out, sir, with the officials of the Bridgetown port. As you know, the harbour master is in charge of all berthings across the country. Harbour masters, representatives. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have gone and we've looked at Whole Town, we've looked at Spitestown. In fact, there's a request for proposals out already, I believe, for the repairs on the Spitestown jetty and several other potential landings, not necessarily for luxury cruise liners, but, sir, for maritime transportation. Because part of what we have said is that we can also ease the burden on transportation across Barbados if we use the sea as well. It's a different experience. There are some people who want to travel more leisurely. Certainly already there are one or two hotels which are using their own form of maritime transportation between hotels on the West Coast. They move from one to go to another for dinner, move from that one to another for some other experience, and they just beach on the land, on the beach, the craft on the beach, and back it off back into the water. We are looking to do something a little bit more sophisticated and have a jetty that you actually land on, tie up against, get off, get on. But the point is that we have identified sites across this island where that is feasible. Those sites, I cannot remember all of them off the top of my head, but I do know we start in Spitestown, we plan to go through Whole Town, Fitz Village, Mr. Speaker, sir, Bridgetown, we go into the constituency of the member for Christchurch West, probably Accra, and then Oistins. And in between there may be one or two others. But the fact of the matter is those are the core. Now, sir, the question of northern landings helps remove, or northern berthings, helps remove from the congestion of the port a certain class of ship. That is one solution. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, obviously it is necessary for us to go some degree further. And I want to say that the issue of Sugar Point is not one that is closed. Sugar Point, however, has to be substantially remodeled. Discussions are ongoing. I give the House that assurance. But two things have to be looked at. One, a complete redesign of the concept and a scaling down of the concept from the $200 million enterprise that it was first mooted to be. It is perhaps a reflection on the discretion and the judgment of the last administration that in those very straitened times, they were thinking of a $200 million US proposition. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, we do not believe that that is in keeping with reality and that the financing model could sustain that. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have to look at design, we have to look at the scope of the works, we have to relook costing of these facilities. But what is clear is that we have to have home porting facilities in Barbados, and that we have to continue to find ways of enhancing the home porting facilities and the logistics involved in home porting. Now, sir, I'm prepared to take my guidance from you because I got a little bit more of a way to go, and I'm mindful that we're coming on to lunch. But I would want to beg your indulgence to just end on this question of the home porting.
So you'll come back after lunch?
I would come back after lunch, sir, yeah. There are many miles. Oh, you want me to pause now? I was going to say to you, sir, that there are many miles to go before I sleep. But if you hunger, I shall weep. For thee I shall weep. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, I will pause at this stage and come back after lunch.
We know you're considerate for
I am
your other
obliged to.
members. Member for St. Michael Sophies.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of today's sitting until 2 p.m.
Until what?
2 p.m.
Beg to second that.
The question is that this House be suspended until 2 p.m. All members in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This House is now suspended until 2 p.m. today. Thank you.